Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today is a very exciting day because we have our second ever Dinozoo figure, and you can quite clearly see by the species title right there, it is a Stegouros, and it is a really small figure. And to show you how small, there we are holding it now in our hands, and you can see it is extremely tiny. And he actually also sent me an unpainted version, which is pretty cool because I'll be able to give one, my own personal flavor as far as paint application goes, and then of course have the version that they released, the official version. And also in the package we have some of these really cool Dinozoo logos. There's a bunch of them actually, which is really neat to have included in there. And we also have the card, and this is something that anybody interested in the Dinozoo line should definitely, maybe screenshot or just at the very least pay attention to, because it has all of the contact information for Dinozoo so you can get a hold of them and, purchase any of their upcoming releases. However, this one I think is sold out, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm pretty sure it is though. But you can see as far as the packaging, it looks just like the packaging did for their previous release. And you can also see again that we have some more information up here on the top, also stating that the Stegouros is in 1/35th scale. A nice Dinozoo logo over there, Dinozoo logo on the side, and then another really nice image here on the back, just like we had seen on the Catidocus that they had released prior. We have a beautiful illustration as well as who is responsible for that illustration. So we're going to go ahead, pop this figure out of the box, and then check it out. So here is our incredibly tiny Stegouros out of the packaging, and man, what an impressive figure, not just because of how nicely detailed or nicely painted it is, but again, because of how nicely detailed and painted it is for the size, because it is super tiny. Being a Stegouros in 1/35th scale, you absolutely would expect it to be super tiny, but you don't realize just how small and incredibly cool it's going to be until you have it in hand and take a look at it in person. But I really think they've done a great job on this one yet again, and I'm very excited to take a closer look at it with you guys, so let's go ahead and do that right now. Again, looking at this figure for the size that we have here, it is exceptionally impressive when it comes to a paintwork standpoint, and of course the detailing, but I think the paintwork more so than anything because it's so small and it's so hard to give a figure this small a realistic paint job, but they have completely succeeded in doing that. But starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see the head sculpt has a really nice, really quite highly detailed appearance again, especially for its size. You've got the beak there of our dinosaur, nicely sculpted out. You can see a nice point there at the tip of the beak. You can also see the mouth is slightly open, but not open all that far. And one thing that's really impressive to me is even though it's so tiny, I can actually make out the nostrils on the figure, which is really cool. You can also see the eye, maybe even a little better from this side actually. If we come over here, you can see the eye of the dinosaur is sculpted out pretty nicely, painted pretty nicely. We have some nice darker tones there in the face of our Stegouros with some nice really dark browns, but you also have some whites and stuff that kind of stripe over through the face, like you can see it striping over the top of the head. And they've done a really good job of painting the figure out again in a really nice realistic way, because even looking here at the top of the head, you can see some variations of browns, like there's lighter and darker shades, and that continues as you move back through the course of the figure. As you reach back here into the back of the dinosaur, when we reach into the armored type of an area, again the sculpt looks great, but you could see more really nice variation of color as we have lighter and darker shades of brown, giving this a super nice, very realistic appearance. And they've also done a great job of kind of adding in a slight glossy look to it, not overly glossy, but slightly glossy, so the detail really pops and really shines on the figure. As we continue to move back through the course of the figure, again, not only do we have those really nice variations of browns, but we also have the really nice striping effect that runs the course of the figure, which I think looks really cool as well. And there's actually variations of like a white, and it almost looks like there's some variations of light browns that stripe with it in certain areas. You can see here on the side of the dinosaur that we have a really nice leg sculpt to the Stegouros, a beautiful foot sculpt. You can make out the toes really quite nicely. You can also see that there for the rear leg, and even pick up on a little bit of muscle definition in the thigh. Nice bulky looking thigh for the dinosaur. More stripes running down here along the side of the dinosaur, and then as we lead out into the tail as well looks fantastic. It looks like they've done a really good job of kind of adding in like some washes, maybe like some dark washes, to really highlight the detail, but also again just make it look more lifelike with some variation of color in the skin tone. And then here on the underside, again, it pretty much has that same style of paintwork through the entire course of the figure with the different variations of lighter and darker shades of brown. It almost looks like we can make out a cloaca, but it's a little hard to truly tell because it's so small. You can even get a good idea of like some muscle definition in the chest area here, as well as the throat right there on the underside. Again, taking a look here over at the opposing side, you can see that the dinosaur is kind of walking along. The legs are definitely in different positions on both sides of the body, but it's not like running or anything. It's not a drastically different appearance. Definitely, though, a little difference showing a walking position for the dinosaur. And the paintwork looks pretty much just as nice over here as it does on the initial side. So, again, for something so small, the sculpt is incredibly well done. Like, when it comes to a Stegouros, this is beautiful, but the paint job as well is just fantastic for something this size. Really, really impressive stuff on the part of Dinozoo. And again, we do also have the, if it would focus on it, the unpainted version to give you more of an idea as far as what the sculpt looks like without that paint application. You can see that we have a fantastic texturing to the skin and everything through the course of the figure, and it is just as beautiful even unpainted as it is when it's painted up. I'll be very excited to get some paintwork on this one. I've painted some pretty small figures in the past, some even smaller than this, but I'll be very intrigued to see if I can make mine look even half as nice as the actual release from Dinozoo. Now, as far as a size goes, we are going to have a pretty small size for our figure, so you are looking at just shy, I would say, of 2 inches or a little over 4.5 centimeters, closing in on 5 centimeters. For a length, you're really not going to have much at all for a height. It's somewhere in between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 of an inch, maybe at about 1.5 centimeters. Somewhere in there, this area is kind of obscuring my measurement, so it's a little hard to tell. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, next to our Dinozoo Stegouros. And man, does that ever show you how insanely impressive this figure is when it comes to how small it is, but how good the paint scheme and paint application, as well as the detailing, is for something this small. It is an incredibly small yet incredibly impressive figure, and I really think that next to these figures here you can truly see that. And then for 2 more size comparisons, we have a Mattel Mini Giganotosaurus as well as a Toy Monster International Captives Mini Dilophosaurus, and you can see that even they tower over quite drastically over this Stegouros from Dinozoo. But for one more comparison that I'm really excited to see with this, there is the Cattydochus that previously was released by Dinozoo, their initial release, next to their Stegouros. And you can see both figures are pretty small, both are pretty small species, so you would expect them to be small, but you can also get a pretty good idea here as far as how they size up next to each other, and also just, again, show the variety and the impressive lineup from Dinozoo, because both of these are gorgeous, gorgeous models. So this is my second Dinozoo figure entering my collection, and I feel like this one, honestly, is just as nice as the first one, just as nice as the Cattydochus. However, I think even though I was really blown away and impressed with the Cattydochus, I think I'm even more impressed with this Stegouros just because of how small it is, but how good of a job they did on it. Like, the sculpt is really quite phenomenal. Like, there's not really too much going on as far as the pose or the positioning, but I feel like it's nice and natural. It just kind of makes it look like it's a Stegouros just walking along. Maybe it's heading down to the watering hole for a drink, or maybe looking for some vegetation to eat. It looks, again, nice and natural. It doesn't always need to be flashy or dynamic or anything like that, and it works quite nicely for this figure, especially because of how small it is. But again, the fine detailing of the sculpt is also really quite nicely done, and Dinozoo has done a good job of highlighting the detail quite beautifully with the coloration and paint application they've given it, because for something so small, this has an incredibly impressive paint job to it. They've added in quite a bit of different tones of color to it, and they've painted it in a way where even though it's so small, there's not like too much paint that it kind of obscures how nice the sculpt is. It really does complement the sculpt, and the sculpt complements the paint job, which is not something you always get to see or say about different models. But they have done a great job, I think, as far as like choosing the tones of color for the figure as well, because it also looks really quite nice and natural, and adding in quite a bit of different varying tones of color, which help to give it a pretty realistic look overall. And again, the fact that it is so small and has all of these aspects to it that are just so well done shows off just how insanely impressive this Stegouros is. And it's the very first time I've ever had the opportunity to enter a Stegouros into my collection, so that is really exciting as well. I always love entering new species into my collection, so any day I get to do that, it is a great day. And now Dinozoo is 2 for 2 as far as that goes, because I didn't have a Catidocus prior, and I definitely did not have a Stegouros, so 2 species that they have given me the pleasure of adding into my collection. So my suggestion for you guys is make sure you keep following Dinozoo on all of their social media accounts, and of course, keep following along to my news videos, because as Dinozoo releases their figures, I'm always trying to stay on top of that to let everyone know, and pick up any of the future releases of Dinozoo. You can, again, contact Dinozoo to see if they have any more of these Stegouros available, but I don't know that they do, but it really wouldn't hurt to check and find out. Regardless, a very cool figure, I really recommend it, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe before you go hunting it down, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.